back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for all right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football.
Keep yourself in the loop of everything football on the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast. The latest news on and off the field, be it college football, Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC to the NFL. We've got you covered. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast.
And welcome everybody to another edition of the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. As always, I'm your host, Kenneth, and it's great to have you guys here on this Thursday, September 26th. We have a lot to cover on the show today. Before I get into that, just want to remind you guys, as always, tip or donate and get your comments recognized. Go to the Super Chat button. Click on that. That will help create a Super Chat of any thought or comment that you may have. During the live broadcast, I will acknowledge it, and it just makes the show more lively, more entertaining between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. We appreciate your guys' viewership each and every day, so any contribution you can make to the show means the world to us as we put out content for you guys each and every day. And also, the other way to help out the show is by going to the link at the bottom of the show segment on the ticker, gsmcpodcast.net. That's gsmcpodcast.net. So, let's get into what we are going to discuss for today. So we're going to start off the show. We're going to preview tonight's game to kick off Week 4 between the New York Giants and the Dallas Cowboys. It'll be the first meeting between these two NFC East rivals, so we'll get into that. We'll also get into talking about the Dolphins and their quarterback situation. Skylar Thompson made the start for them on Sunday against the Seahawks with no Tua Tagovailoa, him being placed on IR. But he also got hurt in the game, so we'll talk about their situation as well as just getting into the game recap as well. The Seahawks improving to 3-0 on the season. So the Dolphins and the Seahawks we'll talk about in the next segment. Then in the third part of the show, we'll get into talking about the Bears-Colts game. That's another game that I didn't get to this week that we'll talk about. We'll evaluate the performances of both quarterbacks, Anthony Richardson of the Colts and Caleb Williams of the Bears. We'll get into that and some of the concerns I have with those teams going forward. We'll get into the Bengals. We'll talk about some comments made by Joe Burrow. And just, the Bengals, they're off to an 0-3 start, so we'll kind of just talk about them. And then the final part of the show, we'll continue that discussion talking about them, but as well as talking about the other teams that are 0-3, as well as other teams that are struggling going into Week 4, and can they turn it around? So let's get into the first topic, which is previewing tonight's game between the Cowboys and the Giants. So it's an interesting game because the Giants are coming in off of a win, Cowboys coming in off of back-to-back losses now. The Giants could very easily be 2-1 if they had a kicker. But they're 1-2, Cowboys are 1-2. They're coming off of back-to-back home losses, one to the Saints, where the Saints dropped 44 points on them, and then against the Ravens, which the game got a little bit close at the end. But for the most part, the Ravens were in full control of that game. At one point, that game was 28-6. So, and for both teams, for the Giants, Week 1 was a disaster. They could have beaten the Commanders, like I said, and then looked a little bit better against the Browns. So, the Giants are starting to look like they might not be one of the worst teams in football. But again, you could say, well, they played against the Commanders, who have a bad defense, and against the Browns, which, Deshaun Watson is not playing well. But the Browns do have a good defense. So you got to factor that in. And it was on the road. It was a tough place to play. But the Giants got the job done. So I was encouraged by what I saw. And Daniel Jones played a little bit better in this game. He hasn't been great this year, of course. The first game was a disaster, but these last couple games has looked better. Malik Neighbors looks like a stud. The Giants are running the football well with Devin Singletary. The offensive line is is playing well. They're protecting Daniel Jones a little bit, opening up lanes for Devin Singletary, so you got to be encouraged by that. For the defense, that was a breakout game for them. 8 sacks off of Deshaun Watson. Now, you could point to the Browns' offensive line being a little banged up and Deshaun Watson running into some of those sacks. Okay, but 8 sacks is 8 sacks. So I was encouraged by that. Now they're going to be going up against a team in the Cowboys that has struggled. Defensively, running the football, it's been a problem. And can this be a get-right game for them? Well, the Cowboys have won 12 of the last 13 matchups against the Giants. And the other thing, too, is Daniel Jones, I believe, is 1-12 in primetime games. And he's 1-7 against the Cowboys. And that one win came against Andy Dalton during the COVID season. Other than that, has never beaten Dak Prescott head-to-head. So that's why this is an interesting game, because the Cowboys, they look vulnerable. They do. Like I said, they're struggling to run the football. The defense is not playing well. The Giants could take advantage of that. But it could also go the other way, where this could be a get-right game for the Cowboys. They can get to Daniel Jones. They could create turnovers. Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb get it going. And this could be how it always has been, the last several years now, where the Cowboys just dominate the Giants. Now, I don't think this game is going to be 40-0. I don't think that. I think this will be more competitive than what we saw last year in the opener at MetLife Stadium. But I do think that the Cowboys will continue their dominance over the Giants. Unfortunately. The Cowboys are coming off of 2 straight losses where they've gotten embarrassed. I would have felt a little bit better going into this game if the Cowboys had come back and beat the Ravens. But because now that they're coming off of 2 straight losses at home, they're really looking for a win. And the Giants got some players banged up. There's going to be no Drew Phillips in this game, their young corner, which is a concern. I don't think there's going to be any Adoree Jackson either. So they're down 2 corners, 2 starting corners, with the secondary that hasn't been great so far. And now you got to go up against CeeDee Lamb. Now, he's the one guy that they're going to have to focus on. Let some of these other guys beat you, like Brandon Cooks, like Turpin, who had a good game. Jacob Ferguson was back. Take CeeDee Lamb out of the game. Make Dak Prescott throw it to his other receivers, his other weapons. But also, have them try to establish the run. Because looking at the league rankings, rushing yards per game, the Cowboys are 30th in the NFL. They're averaging 73.7 rushing yards per game. That's not good. And they didn't elevate Dalvin Cook from the practice squad once again. Jerry Jones on his radio show, his radio appearance, said because it's a short week. So I would think that he's going to become a factor at some point. Because you got Zeke, who has not been great. Deuce Vaughn hasn't really done much. It's really been Rico Dowdle, but he hasn't been great either. So I would think at some point Dalvin Cook is going to be elevated to the active roster, and they're going to at least see what they got with him. I mean, let's see what happens tonight, because it wouldn't surprise me if the Cowboys' their rushing attack goes off. But I don't think it's going to happen. So, but passing yards per game, Cowboys are first. Giants are 21st. Giants are 19th in rushing yards per game, averaging 105 yards. I mean, Singletary has looked good. It's just he's got to take care of the football. He has 2 fumbles. And then points per game, the Cowboys are 6th, the Giants are 29th. Then on the defensive side of the ball, Cowboys defense is 13th, giving up an average of 198 yards per game, passing yards per game. Giants are 15th, giving up an average of 210 passing yards per game. And then against the run, both defenses struggle. Cowboys are dead last, giving up an average of 185.7 rushing yards per game. And the Giants are 23rd, giving up an average of 131.7 yards per game. Points allowed, Cowboys defense is 30th, Giants defense is 18th. So the Giants, rely upon that running game. I think Malik Neighbors will play well tonight. I know the Cowboys will probably have a plan for him, but I think he's going to make his share of plays. But the one thing I'll say, too, is Daniel Jones has to use his legs in this game. The first game, I was a little surprised by how many times they had Daniel Jones run with it, especially, coming off of his injury. But, now we're in week 4. I'm not saying that he's got to be the leading rusher. But, have some design runs in there tonight. So, we'll see what happens. But, yeah, that's the key. I think the Giants, if they can run the football and you take CeeDee Lamb out of the game, make the Cowboys one-dimensional, maybe they got a shot. Really, for me, it's show me something. Because, like I said, they have lost 12 of the last 13 matchups against the Cowboys. It's been one-sided. So, can tonight be the night that they change course and finally get a win against this team? I don't think it's going to be tonight. I do have the Cowboys winning this game. I'm not going to be a homer and take the Giants. Last year, I took them in week 1. And again, I don't think it's going to be 40-0. Now, the line has changed a little bit. So it was 6.5. Then it went down to as much as 4.5, I saw. And this is off of CBS, and now it's back up to 5.5. I think the Cowboys do win this game. I'm going to say they win. I'm going to say 28-20. I think that's the final score. Dak Prescott usually plays well against the Giants. I think that's going to continue here, especially with the guys banged up in the secondary. But can the Giants pressure the quarterback? Can they get to Dak Prescott with their 3 guys? Happened against the Browns. Can they do it here? They were blitzing a lot, and the Browns had no answers. So can they do it against the Cowboys' offensive line? The Cowboys' offensive line is not what it used to be. It's not a bad offensive line, but it's not what it was in 2014 and not 2016. This is an offensive line that the Giants can give problems. So we'll see. But let me know what you guys think about this game. How do you see this game turning out? Let me know in the comments. So we are going to take our first break of the show. And then when we come back, we'll talk about the Dolphins and their quarterback situation. Skylar Thompson gets hurt in this game. We'll talk about the Seahawks and their performance as well. We'll get into all that when we return from our first break of the show. So with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows with 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the second part of the show, we are going to get into talking about the Seahawks-Dolphins game from Sunday. We'll talk about the Dolphins quarterback situation as well as the performance by the Seahawks on Sunday as well. So, yeah, it really wasn't much of a game here. Seahawks were all over the Dolphins in this game. The Dolphins really got nothing going on offense. Seahawks defense had 6 sacks in this game, and it's an underrated defense. And this is an underrated team, really. And Skylar Thompson made the start for the Dolphins, and he left early with a rib injury. Now, his status for the upcoming game on Monday against the Titans, right now he's day-to-day, but it wouldn't surprise me if he doesn't play. Now, Tim Boyle came into the game, but didn't really do much. And they also do have Tyler Huntley on the practice squad, so I would imagine that they're going to elevate him, and I'm going to imagine that he's going to start. That's who I would start. Now, Tyler Huntley is not, this Hall of Fame quarterback that they're going to put in if that's what they end up doing. But Tyler Huntley is not a bad backup quarterback. I mean, we saw him win some games for the Ravens. He started in a playoff game that the Ravens could have won against the Bengals, but that ended up not happening. I think that's probably, right now, with the options that they have, we saw what Tim Boyle did last year with the Jets. Now, maybe he'll look a little bit better because you're throwing to Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, and, with the running backs that they have. I know the Jets have Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall, but still, the Dolphins have more weapons. But I think Tyler Huntley's probably the guy. And it's not like Skylar Thompson was really doing anything before the injury. Now, hopefully he, comes back and, he's good to go. But I think Tyler Huntley, of the options that they have right now until they can get Tua back later in the season, hopefully, he's probably their best option. And I think that's what they should do. But that's just me. And, we've had conversations about it in our production meeting, and ideas been tossed around like maybe they trade for Russell Wilson, which I don't know if they would do that. I mean, the price would not be very high. You give up a late round pick, you bring him in, because it doesn't look like Russ is going to start. Unless Justin Fields gets hurt or has a really bad game, Russ is not playing for the Steelers. He's the backup. So we'll see. And then you still got some veteran guys on the market. I mean, Ryan Tannehill is out there. His name's been floated around a lot. But it doesn't seem like anybody wants him, which I'm a little bit surprised because I feel like he could at least be a backup quarterback. Be the Joe Flacco from last year. But he remains unsigned. But yeah, I do think that Tyler Huntley is the best option for them. But we'll have to keep an eye on it. We'll see what they end up doing. By Monday, we'll know for sure. But I at least that's what I would do. I would have Tyler Huntley start for my team, because I think you could get more out of him than some of the other quarterbacks on your team. Because he also has that rushing ability too, so that adds another dimension to the offense. But again, that's just me. But let's kind of get into the game itself. Yeah, it was a long day for the Dolphins. So, Seahawks on their first possession, they started off with the ball. 7 plays, 28 yards, 4 minutes, 11 seconds of time possession down the field. Got to the Dolphins' 37-yard line. Jason Myers kicked a 56-yard field goal, so that made it 3-0. Then the Dolphins, put together a drive. They got to the Seahawks 39. Jason Sanders missed a 57-yard field goal. And then the Seahawks, 5 plays, 53 yards. Zach Charbonnet, who was filling in for Kenneth Walker, scores a 4-yard touchdown, so that made it 10-3. Dolphins punted. Geno Smith then threw a pick, and the Dolphins turned that into a field goal. Jason Sanders from 23 yards out. But then on the very next drive, only one play it lasted. Geno Smith, a deep pass to DK Metcalf for a 71-yard touchdown. It was a great throw. A good pitch and catch there. So yeah, that put the Seahawks up by a couple of scores. Dolphins punted. Seahawks missed a field goal. More punts. And then we went to the third quarter. Nothing was happening in the third quarter. Bunch of punts. Dolphins turned it over on downs. Geno Smith threw another pick. Dolphins turned it over on downs. And then they did get a touchdown. They put together an 11-play, 98-yard drive, about 5.5 minutes of time of possession. And that was another Zach Charbonnet touchdown from 10 yards out to make it 24-3. And that's how the game ended. 24-3. The Seahawks improved to 3-0. Dolphins drop to 1-2 on the season. Skylar Thompson went 13 of 19 for 107 yards. No touchdowns, no interceptions. Was sacked 5 times. Tim Boyle was sacked once. He went 7 of 13 for 79 yards. No touchdowns, no interceptions. Dolphins only ran the ball for 65 yards. Achane, 30 yards. Jalen Wright, 17 yards. Jeff Wilson, 14. They were still without Raheem Mostert in this game. And then as for the receivers, Tyreek Hill was their leading receiver, but he only had 3 receptions for 40 yards. And the Dolphins defense had 3 sacks in this game. They did have a couple of turnovers, a couple of interceptions off of Geno Smith, but they really just could not get anything going offensively. After the first quarter, it was 17-3 after the first quarter. After that, nobody really did anything. The Seahawks did score in the fourth quarter, but that was it. Geno Smith went 26 of 34, 289 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions. Zach Charbonnet played well, 18 carries for 91 yards and 2 touchdowns. DK Metcalf had a good game, 4 receptions for 104 yards and a touchdown. Noah Fant had 6 for 60. Tyler Lockett had 5 for 46. Geno actually also had a fumble in this game, but did not lose it. And like I said, 6 sacks for the Seahawks defense, and they improved to 3-0, and they're on top of the NFC West right now. And so far, I think I had them at, 6 or 7 wins on the year? Yeah, it looks like they're going to get more than that. Probably get around 8 or 9, because the last couple of years they've finished 9-8. So it would not surprise me if they get there again. They look good. They look good right now. But you could also say, look at who they went up against. They went up against Bo Nix in his first career start, and Geno did not play well in that game, but they still got the win. Then you beat the Patriots on the road, and that had to go to overtime, and then you beat the Dolphins with a backup quarterback. So you can point to that, and that's why I didn't have the Seahawks in my top 5. But look, they're 3-0, and they're going to get Kenneth Walker back. This week, I forget who they play this week. I have to look very quickly here. But the Dolphins, they'll be playing the Titans. The Seahawks, they will be playing... Oh, that's right. They'll be playing the Lions on Monday Night Football. That's the other Monday game as well. And and those are 2 teams that, it's always a shootout when they go against each other. It's always high scoring. And, the Seahawks have kind of owned the Lions the last few years. Lions are looking to kind of end this losing streak and get a win against the Seahawks, so we'll see. But, yeah, last year, that game went to overtime. It was a high-scoring game. The year before that was high-scoring, so we'll see how it goes. But they're 3-0, and they're in first place. And who would have saw that? With the 49ers and the Rams in their division. But that's how it is right now. Now, it's not going to stay like that. I think it's going to change. But give them credit. They're 3-0. Mike McDonald has not lost a game as head coach so far. And for the Dolphins, yeah, it's unfortunate that this Tua injury has really kind of derailed their season. Now, I think if they could at least figure out something at quarterback and they could tread water until Tua comes back, then, they could be in good shape. Because, you got a lot of playmakers on this team. And you got to get them the ball. Like, Tyreek Hill only had 3 catches. You got to get him the ball more, somehow. And that's why I said I really do think that Tyler Huntley should be the starter going forward, if they were to do that. But if you look at this Dolphins schedule, they take on the Titans, then they're at the Patriots. So those are 2 very winnable games. But then after that, you go into the bye week 6. You're at the Colts, home against the Cardinals, at the Bills, at the Rams, and the Rams are going to be healthy by then, you would imagine. Home against the Raiders, home against the Patriots, at Packers on Thanksgiving, home against the Jets, at Texans, home against the 49ers, at Browns, and then at the Jets. So between weeks 13 and 18, that's a tough stretch. And then if Anthony Richardson plays well in the Week 7 matchup, Week 7 to Week 10 is going to be tough too. Dolphins got a tough schedule. The Raiders haven't been great. They've been inconsistent. I mean, they beat the Ravens in Baltimore, but then you lose to the Panthers at home. I mean, the Patriots, those are divisional games, but I think the Dolphins should win both. That's just me. Well, the Week 5 matchup might be a little dicey, depending on who's playing quarterback. But that is a tough schedule. There's not really any gimmies on that schedule. Other than, I guess you could say, the Patriots, and they got the Titans coming up, who have not been great. But they got to figure it out. It's still early. Could they tread water until Tua comes back? We'll have to see. I mean, if they're out of it, I don't think Tua should play at all this year. But that's just me. But let me know what you guys think, though, about the Dolphins, about the Seahawks start. Let me know what your takeaways were from that game. It was really not much of a game at all. The Dolphins defense, kept them in it. It's just they could not generate any points, any kind of offense whatsoever. So there will definitely be a change at quarterback, I would imagine. But we'll have to wait and see. So before we go to break, I just want to remind you guys once again, tip or donate, get your comments recognized. Go to the Super Chat button to create a Super Chat. Any thought or comment that you have throughout the live broadcast, this will create that, and I will acknowledge it during the live broadcast, and it makes the show more lively, more entertaining between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. We appreciate your guys' viewership each and every day, so any contribution you can make to the show means the world to us as we put out content for you guys each and every day. And also, the other way to help out the show is by going to the link at the bottom of the show segment on the ticker, GSMCpodcast.net. That is GSMCpodcast.net. Again, displayed on the ticker at the bottom of the show segment. So when we come back from our next break, we will get into talking about the Bears-Colts game. This is the last recap from Week 3 that we'll get into. We'll talk about the performances by both quarterbacks in this game and just talk about the teams in general as well. So with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the third part of the show, we are now going to get into talking about the Colts-Bears game from Sunday. Talk about the Colts picking up the win 21-16. Get into the quarterback performances from that game, so let's get into it. So, both quarterbacks have been struggling. Anthony Richardson did get off to a good start against the Texans. He played really well in that game, even though he only completed 9 passes. But, he did a lot with those 9 passes. But he hasn't been great these last 2 games. He's turning the ball over. And, he's a guy that missed pretty much all of his rookie season. He only played in, I think, 2 full games. So this is still kind of what people are saying, and it's true. This is still kind of his rookie year. So, but he'll do things like he'll complete this long pass to Alec Pierce. He'll set the Colts up to score a touchdown, but then he'll throw a bad red zone interception, which is what he did. So he's been a mixed bag, but the talent is there, and he's going to figure it out. And I do believe the same thing with Caleb Williams. Because he did look better, completed some nice passes, was able to, get his first touchdown pass, and that was to Rome Odunze. And it's kind of funny because, that was Rome Odunze's first touchdown, so it's like, what do you do with the ball? Okay, I think Caleb Williams wanted the ball, but maybe you cut the ball in half. You let the receiver keep one, and you keep the other. But there were some positives, even with the Bears losing, but sorry, I had to hold back a sneeze. But again, it always happens at least once during the show. It's so annoying. But anyways, yeah, I mean, there were some positives to take away from this game. However, when I was reading up on the game, I was reading an article from Pro Football Talk, and coaching was the topic of discussion in that article when it comes to the Bears. Because the Bears had Caleb Williams throw the ball 52 times. And the Colts are a defense that is susceptible against the run. Now, the Bears, they did run the ball 28 times, and they only got 63 yards out of it. So it's not like they didn't try to attempt to establish the run. But the Colts were also missing DeForest Buckner in this game. And the Bears were really only able to get 63 yards on the ground. They should be able to get more. And that didn't happen. So we'll go through the game summary really quick. So the Bears, they actually put together a nice drive. They got into field goal range for Cairo Santos, who's been good this year. But he missed a 56-yarder. Colts punted, Bears punted, Colts punted again, Bears punted. We go to the second quarter, and this is what I was talking about. Anthony Richardson on 3rd and 10 from the Bears 48. He hits Alec Pierce for a 44-yard pass play. Then from the Bears 3, he throws an interception. But then Caleb Williams throws an interception. First, he hits Rome Odunze for 47 yards. Then he got a 6-yard gain with Khalil Herbert running the football, but then he throws an interception. Colts then turn that into a touchdown. Anthony Richardson hits Granson, the tight end, for 40 yards, and that sets up a Jonathan Taylor 29-yard rushing touchdown. After that, the Bears, they turned it over on downs. I think this is the play that everybody's talking about. So it was 3rd and goal. Well, it was 1st and goal from the Colts 4. They run the ball with Khalil Herbert. He gains 2 yards on the play. Then 2nd and goal. Gain another yard with Herbert. You're down to the Colts 1. They run it again. Herbert doesn't score. He gets stuffed. And then they run this option play with DeAndre Swift, and he loses 12 yards. And this is on 4th and goal. And Bears got criticized for that call. Then the Colts punted. And then actually, before the half, so Caleb Williams throws a Hail Mary on 4th and 2 from the Colts 45. It gets batted up. DJ Moore catches it off the rebound, but he's just short. He gets tackled at the Colts 1. So that could have tied the game. But it didn't. So then we go to the third quarter, and Anthony Richardson right away to open up the second half throws another interception. This pass was intended for Michael Pittman. It was intercepted by Jalen Johnson. The Bears, they turned that into a field goal. Cairo Santos, a 53-yarder. Colts punted. Caleb Williams threw another interception, trying to hit Rome Odunze. Colts turned it over on downs. Bears punted. Colts then got a touchdown. And this was a Trey Sermon touchdown, a 1-yard touchdown. This drive was 9 plays, 80 yards, 5.5 minutes of time of possession. Then the Bears answered with a touchdown. This was Caleb Williams' first touchdown in the NFL. It was a 1-yard pass play to Rome Odunze. So that made it 14-9. And they went for 2 and didn't get it. Then the Colts punted. The Bears fumbled. Caleb Williams got sacked by Laiatu Latu, the Colts' first-round draft choice. And he recovered the fumble. Or actually, no, he didn't recover the fumble. It was recovered by Stewart. But yeah, Latu got the sack. And then the Colts turned that into a touchdown. Jonathan Taylor from 1 yard out to make it 21-9. Bears scored a touchdown on their next possession. And Caleb Williams connected with Cole Kmet for a 6-yard touchdown. And yeah, that was it. The Colts, they were able to ice the game, and that's all she wrote. Both teams are now 1-2. Bears dropped to 1-2. Colts improved to 1-2. Caleb Williams went 33 of 52, 363 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, and also had a fumble lost in this game. Like I said, the Bears only ran the ball for 63 yards. Roma Dunze had a good game, 6 receptions for 112 yards and a touchdown. Cole Kmet was good, 10 for 97 and a touchdown. DJ Moore had 8 for 78. Bears defense, only 1 sack in this game. And then as for the Colts, Anthony Richardson, 10 of 20, 167 yards, no touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Only had 24 rushing yards. Jonathan Taylor, solid game, 23 carries, 110 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Alec Pierce was their leading receiver, 1 reception for 44 yards. But yeah, they got to get this passing game going for the Colts. And I feel like they're still trying to, Anthony Richardson still looks like he's trying to get that rust off. But also, again, this is still kind of his rookie year, and he's still making rookie mistakes with these bad interceptions. That's got to be cut down. And I think as the year goes on, he will get better. Colts defense finished with 4 sacks, 2 interceptions by Jalen Jones off of Caleb Williams. But, yeah, I mean, and you saw a couple of nice throws that Caleb Williams made. Same thing with Anthony Richardson, but the turnovers, still an issue for both of these guys. But the other thing, too, is, I mean, when you talk about the Bears, their offensive line, I mean, that's part of the reason why they really couldn't run the ball, is the offensive line is not good. Caleb Williams is not getting protection either, and that's causing some of these turnovers as well. And that was something that was a concern going into the year, was the offensive line. And, you got to be able to protect Caleb Williams, because if you don't, then, yeah, I mean, the Bears are not really going to be able to do anything offensively. And they have a good defense. It's just, you're still waiting on that offense to get it going. And they got it going a little bit, but again, when I was reading the article from Pro Football Talk, can't have Caleb Williams throwing the ball 52 times. And this game never really got out of reach. But it's just they really couldn't establish the run. And on top of that, so they brought in DeAndre Swift. They gave him a big contract. But now it looks like Roschon Johnson is going to get more of a look, according to some articles that I was seeing. Because DeAndre Swift has not really done well. But you could also blame that on the offensive line. I mean, last year he was running behind a great offensive line with the Eagles. Now look at what Saquon Barkley's doing with that line. And now he comes to the Bears, and the Bears don't have a great line. But also coaching. There was some miscommunication on, I think, when the Bears were going to go for 2, they had to waste a timeout because there were some miscommunications. There were people holding up, 2 fingers to go for 2, and there was people holding up 1 finger to go for the extra point. And that's where coaching comes into play. There was miscommunication there. And that was another concern going into the year, is Matt Eberflus. The Bears did finish the season strong last year, but, I haven't really been a believer of Eberflus. I wanted to see what he could do this year. And on top of that, the Bears offensive coordinator, Shane Waldron, they got him from the Seahawks. Seahawk fans were happy that he was gone. And, Bears fans, were happy about this hire initially, but it doesn't seem like they're happy about it now. And really the emphasis in that article, point of emphasis, was coaching. Coaching matters. And this coaching staff, I don't think is great. I'm still waiting on, Matt Eberflus. Can he prove himself here? But yeah, so far Bears are 1-2. They could very easily be 0-3. But they're 1-2. And again, Caleb Williams got it going a little bit in this game. So I think he's only going to get better as the year goes on, but he's got to get better protection. And the coaching staff has to be on the same page. Because the other thing that was talked about in the article is you look around the league, and I've talked about it too, look at some of these other quarterbacks. You see Sam Darnold with the Vikings, what he's doing. Baker Mayfield with the Buccaneers. I know against the Broncos that was bad, but still, made the playoffs last year. Geno Smith with the Seahawks after being a backup for most of his career from the beginning of the year, or the beginning of his career when he was the starting quarterback of the Jets. Coaching does matter. And, is Caleb Williams in a good situation? I think with the weapons that he has around him, yes. The offensive line is a problem, but you're backed by a good defense. But the coaching staff has really got to show me something. They got to turn this around. And I think once you get better protection around Caleb Williams, then, and also get Keenan Allen back too. That'll definitely help. Then I think they're gonna turn their season around, and they're gonna be a decent team down the stretch here. Well, we're still in we're approaching the last week of the first quarter of the year, but like I said, or have been saying, they're gonna be a team that gets better as the year goes on. I really do believe that. I don't know if they're gonna make the playoffs, but I do think they're gonna be a different team towards the end of the year, because there's too much talent for this team to finish with 5 wins. Now, if that ends up happening, then maybe you make a change. So, we'll see what happens. For the Colts, they got to win here, so that was important. But they take on the Steelers now. The Bears, they take on the Rams. Colts take on the Steelers. And the Steelers are 3-0, so that's going to be a tough game. They got that defense coming in, and that defense is going to wreak havoc. And Justin Fields is playing well. For the Bears, you're taking on the Rams. They're coming off of a big win against the 49ers, but they're dealing with a ton of injuries. That defense could take advantage of that banged-up offensive line. And the Rams' defense is not great. So this could be another game where Caleb Williams could show out, play well, and maybe the Bears get a win at home. We'll see. But let me know what you guys think about this game. What were some of your takeaways from it? Let me know in the comments. So we are going to take our next break. When we come back, we'll talk about the Cincinnati Bengals, a couple things to talk about with them. Comments made by Joe Burrow, some other players on the team as well, Zach Taylor. We'll get into all that when we return from our next break. So with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the fourth part of the show, we are now going to get into talking about the Bengals and their 0-3 start. We'll get into some comments made by Joe Burrow, as well as the cornerback for the team, Cam Taylor-Britt, because he had some interesting comments before the game against the Commanders, and I wanted to get into that as well, and also just talking about what Zach Taylor had to say on that. So this is what Joe Burrow said. Or actually, no. This is what Burrow and Zach Taylor had to say regarding the start. So Zach Taylor, this is from Zach Taylor via the Associated Press. He said, "We didn't envision ourselves in this spot, but here we are. It's a kick in the gut, and you feel really good about the team, and you start off 3-0. But again, that is where we are right now. We need to find a way to win next Sunday and get this thing moving in the right direction." Yeah, it's not been great so far. And you thought after, Burrow connects with Chase for a 41-yard touchdown, I'm like, okay, here we go. The Bengals are back. But, the offense played well. It's just the defense was the complete opposite. There were no punts in that game. So this is what Burrow said. "We had our opportunities and didn't cash in on them. We stalled out on some drives in the first half. That's been the common denominator these first 3 weeks." Burrow said it was a very positive conversation. Talking to Cam Taylor-Britt, I'm guessing. Oh, yeah. Reporters spotted Burrow and Taylor walking into the coach's office rather than the locker room. Or, actually, no, this was Zach Taylor, my bad. The other Taylor. It was a very positive conversation. We're not happy with where we're at, but by no means is the season over. There will be some critical thinking that I will have to do to see what kind of leader I want to be going forward, whatever I feel the team needs from me. I mean, I'm not putting this loss on Joe Burrow, but, it's really the defense. So I meant to talk about Cam Taylor-Britt. So he talked about calling the Commanders' offense a college offense, which, you got Cliff Kingsbury in there, Jaden Daniels, his rookie season. He says he doesn't regret the college offense comments, but this is what he had to say after the game. I don't regret it. I didn't mean anything malicious out of the comment. It was made bigger than it was. Yes, I can eat my words, most definitely. We did take an L today. Zach Taylor, I think, also had some comments on it. Yeah, this is what Zach Taylor said. He said, that's not what we do. We praise our own team. We praise the other team. We don't take shots like that. That team hasn't punted in 2 weeks, which is correct. But, yeah, that's what I wanted to get into. And, yeah, the Bengals, it has not been good so far. But, Joe Burrow has played well these last 2 weeks. I know against the Chiefs, you could also point to the sack fumble that was returned for a touchdown. That, changed the complexion of that game. But can Burrow be blamed? I mean, he's the quarterback, so obviously he's going to get some blame. But I don't think he's the main reason why the Bengals are 0-3. I mean, maybe week 1 you could point to when they only put up 10 points. There was a fumble at the goal line that, maybe if that doesn't happen, maybe it's a different game. But, yeah, it has not been great so far for the Bengals. And one of the things that's been talked about is just the Bengals like to do a lot of talking. Because you go back to when they played in the AFC Championship game against the Chiefs, and they were calling Arrowhead Burrowhead. Yeah, they shouldn't have done that. Because you're only adding more fuel to the fire. And, the Bengals, when they beat the Chiefs the first time in the AFC Championship game, that gave them a lot of confidence. Like, hey, we just went into Arrowhead and beat the Chiefs. And they thought they were going to be able to do it again, and they didn't. And then they end up losing to the Chiefs once again in week 2. Well, with Burrow this time. Last year they lost to them late in the season. And then you got, Cam Taylor-Britt talking about the Commanders' offense. And that Commanders' offense played really well. They were able to slice and dice that defense all night long. Bengals had no answers. And, got to give him credit. Held himself accountable, said he'll take the L on that. So you can respect it. But when you talk, you got to back it up. And they did not back it up. And the other thing, too, that has been talked about is, putting more of the blame on Joe Burrow. And just how Joe Burrow, he kind of gets a pass a lot of times, whereas some other quarterbacks, they'll get criticized, which I do agree with. And that doesn't just happen with Joe Burrow. That happens with other quarterbacks as well. Like, you'll have some quarterbacks that just don't play well, and they don't get criticized, but you'll have, like Dak Prescott, for example. He's another one that gets heavily criticized, more so than other guys. Joe Burrow kind of gets a pass, which, I mean, I think it depends on who you talk to. Because if Joe Burrow didn't play well on Monday, I would say, yeah, he hasn't been great. He wasn't great the first week, was better the second week, and played really well on Monday. If a quarterback doesn't play well, I'm going to acknowledge it. Like, Patrick Mahomes has not been great so far this year. And we talk about Patrick Mahomes as the best quarterback in the NFL, and he still is. Right now, he's not playing like it, but he is. Right now, the best quarterback in the NFL is Josh Allen. It's really, I think it really all depends on who you talk to. But at least for me, if a guy doesn't play well, I'm going to say it. But I don't think Joe Burrow deserves the majority of the blame for Monday's loss. Now, some of the drives were resulted in field goals. There was a missed field goal early on in the game, missed by Evan McPherson. Whereas the Commanders, they were putting up touchdowns. That kind of made a difference. Now, Seibert did kick a field goal at one point, but other than that, Commanders were going up and down the field scoring touchdowns. You got to match that. So that's where the blame comes in. Joe Burrow didn't do enough to win, but I honestly think he did do enough to win. It's just the defense really let them down in this game. They couldn't stop Austin Eckler had a big run in this game, and then he ended up leaving. The running game was a problem. Jane Daniels running with the football was a problem. Terry McLaurin had a couple of big plays in the game. They had no answers. And I did bring this up. One of my friends who's a Steelers fan said that he had the Bengals finishing in last place. Well, if you look right now, the Bengals are in last place. And his Steelers are in first place. Now, is that going to stay the same? I don't think so. I think the Bengals are going to get right. But they do have some concerns on the offensive line, too, which has been a problem for years since Burrow's been drafted. Like Trent Brown, one of their tackles. He's going to be out for the year, torn patella tendon. So Amarius Mims, who they drafted, he's going to have to step in. And, you worry about Joe Burrow because Joe Burrow has an injury history and, you don't want to see him getting hit. They just got T. Higgins back. So it's just you get guys back, but then other guys get hurt. And the defense is not playing well. That's really, for me, the biggest thing. The defense is not playing well. Because if you're going to give up, 30-plus points every week, the Bengals aren't going to win a lot of games. Doesn't matter how many points Joe Burrow puts up. Like, you really thought that was the game that was going to turn everything around. Because, again, you started off, you hit that pass to Chase for the touchdown, 41-yard touchdown, and it was like, here we go. And then the Commanders answered right away, and it was just back and forth. But then it got to a point where it was the Bengals trying to keep up. So now they got a game against the Panthers, and, this isn't the Bryce Young Panthers. This is Andy Dalton. This is your former quarterback you're going up against. And that's not going to be an easy game. Andy Dalton played well against the Raiders defense in Vegas. Now he's going up against a defense that was awful. Andy Dalton could I definitely see playing well in this game coming up on Sunday. And it's going to be up to the Bengals offense. They're going to have to put up points until the defense can figure it out. And the defense still has good players. Now they were missing guys. They were missing Sheldon Rankins and BJ Hill in the running game. But yeah, the back end, it's not great. They got things they got to clean up. But, a lot of that talking that they've done in the past, they got to keep that to a minimum. Because that comment by Cam Taylor-Britt really blew up in his face. And it's not Burrowhead anymore. It never really was, but I guess for one game. But now they got to focus. Like, hey, we're 0-3. We got to get things right. And I really still believe that they will. But for me, I think the way they get in is the wild card, because that's why I had them making it as a wild card. Got a lot of work to do. But this is a team that does start off slow, but would have expected them to get a win. And no, they're 0-3 now. And what's interesting is a stat that I saw. And let me see if I still have it. So this is Adam Schefter's Instagram post. So during the Super Bowl era, 255 teams have started 0-3. 6 of them have gone on to make the playoffs. The last 0-3 team to make the playoffs was the 2018 Houston Texans. So it has been done before. It hasn't been done in a while. but it's been done before. So the Bengals can do that. They could be the latest team that does that. So we'll see. But let me know what you guys think. Do you believe that the Bengals can turn their season around? Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments. We'll talk about them a little bit more in the final segment because we will take our final break here. And then when we come back, we'll talk about some of the teams that are struggling. We'll talk about the other 0-3 teams. We'll also get into some of the 1-2 teams. We'll get into them, talk about can they, turn their seasons around, what's going on with them, all that when we return from our final break. So, for one final time today, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the final part of the show, we're going to get into talking about the teams that are struggling. We will get into talking about, the 0-3 teams as well as, some of the 1-2 teams that are struggling and can they turn it around. So let's get into that. So we'll start off with the 0-3 team. So we did talk about the Bengals, and I do believe that they will turn it around. I'm not giving up just yet, but it's not looking good right now. However, the other 0-3 teams, they both reside in the AFC South, and that's the Tennessee Titans and the Jacksonville Jaguars. And for them, I'm not as confident in them turning their seasons around. The Jaguars, that performance on Monday against the Bills, that was horrendous. Nothing went right for them in that game. The Bills didn't punt until the fourth quarter. And Trevor Lawrence, I think he's 0-8 now in his last 8 starts. It was 0-7, now it's 0-8. I think it's 0-8 now. He hasn't been good. But I don't think he's... I think there's a bigger issue besides just Trevor Lawrence. It's really everything. But he hasn't been great. The defense, they couldn't stop the Bills. They couldn't do anything to contain that offense and Josh Allen. And I don't know when it's going to get better. They take on the Texans this weekend. Could they pull off an upset? Yeah. But I don't think they are. The Texans are coming off of a loss where they got embarrassed. So, they're going to want to protect their home turf. It's just not looking good right now. And I have a feeling this season is going to continue to spiral out of control. And then, Doug Peterson and Trent Baalke are going to be gone. And then I look at the Tennessee Titans. Again, you got a first-year head coach, second-year quarterback. I think there's some urgency to get something going here. Because you want to see if Will Levis is the guy. I think this is really Will Levis's only chance. If he continues to play bad, the Titans are going to look for another quarterback. Whereas, the Jaguars, they're locked in Trevor Lawrence. Like, there's going to be changes in terms of the coaching and front office. When it comes to the Titans, there could be a change behind center. They're not committed to Will Levis. Now, Callahan said that he is the quarterback moving forward, but that does not mean that's going to be beyond this year. He could be benched before the end of the year. So that's where these teams kind of differ. Now, I didn't have either of these teams making the playoffs. I had the Jags finishing with a more respectable record. The Titans, I only had them at 6 wins. Right now, I mean, they could get maybe like 4 wins. And it's not to say that, they could have started off 2-0. They should have beaten the Bears. The Jets, they had their opportunities there. They were winning that game. They really didn't have a chance against the Packers. The Packers kind of dominated them from start to finish. But again, Will Levis turnovers, threw a pick 6 in this game, lost, had a fumble in this game against the Packers. Will Levis has been a problem. And they got to figure it out. They got to limit the turnovers, limit the mistakes. And if they could do that, then you know what? Maybe they could turn their season around. But I don't think that's going to happen. If Will Levis can show improvement as the year goes on, then, we're going to have a different conversation. But right now, it's not looking good. It's not looking good. But, Will Levis will put together drives. He'll make some throws where you're like, wow, that was impressive. But then he'll just... it's kind of the same thing with Anthony Richardson. Now, I think Anthony Richardson's ceiling is higher than Will Levis's. But, again, they make plays where you're like, wow, that was incredible. And then they do something where, Will Levis tries to, throw a backwards pass or, he shovels it back to Tajay Spears against the Jets, and that ends up being a fumble. He tries to, as he's about to get sacked, he tries to flick the ball up and throw it away, and it ends up being a pick 6, and you cost your team the game. And another pick 6 and another fumble in the game against the Packers. It's just turnovers have been a problem. I think he leads the NFL in turnovers, which doesn't surprise me. They got to cut that down. And if they could do that, then, like I said, maybe they could turn their season around. Because they do have talent on this team. They have a good defense. The running game hasn't been bad so far this year. They're trying to get DeAndre Hopkins healthy because he's still dealing with his knee issue. Scored a touchdown against the Packers. Ridley had a good Week 2 performance against the Jets. Got Tyler Boyd as your third wide receiver. They have talent on this team. I've been saying that. It's just, you need your quarterback to play better. And he hasn't. So we'll see what happens going into this week when they take on the Dolphins. That's a winnable game because the Dolphins are going to have a backup quarterback playing. And they did beat Tua and the Dolphins on the road last year on Monday night. So, yeah, you got that. The Jags, they're taking on the Texans. But then you got some of the 1 and 2 teams that are struggling. The 49ers, they're dealing with a ton of injuries right now. But I think the bigger concern for me, like Brock Purdy played well. And this was without McCaffrey, without Debo, without Kittle. You had Ayuk. Juwan Jennings was great in that game. Jordan Mason has been running the football well for them. So, the offense, I think, will be okay. They're going to get Debo and Kittle back. We'll see what happens with McCaffrey. My concern is the defense. That's where I'm more concerned about when it comes to the 49ers. Because now Javon Hargrave partially tore his pectoral, and he's out for at least the rest of the regular season. That's a key guy up the middle for them. So he's out. You're still missing Dre Greenlaw. The secondary, that's been a problem the last couple of years. That got torched on Sunday. The defense for me is the concern when it comes to the Niners. Because, look, Brock Purdy played really well. Played one of his best games. And this was without his top weapons. And he, at least for this past week, he shut down the Brock Purdy naysayers, calling him a system quarterback. But, if the defense is going to play like that, and this is against the Rams team that is even more injured. On the offensive line, their top weapons. 49ers should have won that game. They were up in the game. But the Rams came back. Give the Rams credit. Rams picked up a huge win there. So I do have my concerns with the Niners, but I do think, like the Bengals, they're going to be okay. They're going to figure it out. They're going to get guys back. George Kittle was practicing in a limited capacity this week, so hopefully he comes back. You get Deebo Samuel back, hopefully next week. They take on the Patriots, which is a game I think they should win, but who knows? The Patriots, they beat the Bengals. They almost beat the Seahawks. They look terrible against the Jets. I mean, who knows what the Patriots are going to do here? I think the 49ers should win. But you get Deebo and Kittle back. If you at least get those two guys back, okay, but you got to get the defense right. So I'm a little concerned with them. The Cowboys are 1-2. They got more concerns than the Niners do. They can't run the football. The defense has been horrendous. I mean, do they really miss Deron Bland that much? I don't think Deron Bland would make that big of a difference. I mean, he would definitely help. But, the Cowboys, they can't stop the run. Their defense is a problem right now. And they can't run the football. They can't stop the run, and they can't run. So, they got to figure that out. Also, CeeDee Lamb and Dak Prescott aren't on the same page right now. They're trying to work things out there. But there's no other threat besides CeeDee Lamb that scares you in the passing game. And that's a problem. Because at least when you go back to CeeDee Lamb's rookie year, you had Amari Cooper. And then his second year, of course, because Amari Cooper was still with the Cowboys in 21. It was 22 where he got traded to the Browns. But yeah, they don't really have another threat at receiver. They have guys that they like on the team, but nobody that really scares you. But I still think the Cowboys, they're going to finish with a respectable record. I think they're going to still find a way to make the playoffs. I'm not going to jump off of that bandwagon yet, but I do have concerns. I mean, I had them making it in as a wild card team. I think the Eagles, that's their division to lose. But we'll see. And then anybody else that I wanted to get to? I mean, the Rams are 1-2, but they picked up a big win against the Niners that I didn't expect them to win. If they could tread water and get guys back healthy, then, they could get back on track. But I guess some of the other teams, the Browns and the Dolphins, two concerns I have with them, they're both similar, is the quarterback position. Deshaun Watson's not playing well, and the Dolphins are without Tua. Now, the Browns, hopefully they get their tackles back because their tackles got hurt. Nick Chubb could be practicing next week, so getting him back would be a huge boost for this team. But I'm curious to see if Deshaun Watson does finish out the year. Because I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up getting benched. And for the Dolphins, they got to try to tread water until Tua comes back. Can they win against the Titans on Monday? Absolutely. Like I said towards the beginning of the show, Tyler Huntley, I think, should be the starter. I think that's their best option. And then I think there was one more team. Yeah, the Bears. Look, we talked about them. Better protection of Caleb Williams. And got to establish a running game. They have not been running the football well. And I think Caleb Williams, you saw it a little bit, starting to get it going. So we'll see. Now going up against a defense that's not very good in the Rams, that's an opportunity for the Bears to kind of have their breakout game. That's my opinion. But let me know what you guys think about some of the teams that are struggling so far. Who do you think will turn around their season? Who do you think their season is pretty much done? Let me know in the comments. And that is pretty much it for the show for today. I thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure to check out all the other shows. Give the other shows some love. And yeah, so with that, I'm Kenneth Grunfelder signing off from the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. Have a good day, and I will talk to you guys tomorrow. Enjoy the game tonight. Take care.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn ain't that great.